Pushing and pulling film are terms related to the development process of your film, but are decisions made before you shoot your first shot. Pushing means increasing the development time of your film, and pulling means decreasing the development time of your film. Developing time is just how long the film needs to remain in the chemicals in order to get images that are properly exposed. So longer or shorter, or pushing and pulling, can achieve different results. So in short, what is pushing and pulling? Well, it's making the ISO of your film higher or lower. For example, it's approaching dusk or nighttime and you've got Portra 100. That's a 100 ISO film. And you want to handhold your camera for the next shots that you'll be doing through the night. But ISO 100 isn't sensitive enough for your surroundings, so you wish you would have had something like 800 ISO film. Well, you set your light meter to 800, you expose your 100 ISO film for 800, and when you get back to the lab, you tell them that I exposed this for 800 film, can I push this 3 stops? As long as you expose the whole roll consistently for 800 film, you should have no issues with exposure. I guess I should also note that you can't push or pull midway through a roll. It's either the entire roll or not at all. If you do decide to add it mid-roll, now you're just under and overexposing your images. Pulling works in a similar way. If you have 800 ISO film and it's the middle of the day, bright, beaming sunlight, you need a less sensitive film. So you set your light meter to 100 ISO, expose the whole roll for that, get back to the lab, and you tell them to pull it by 3 stops. Now, I'm kind of making it sound like you can do any ISO for any film you want, but there are certain aspects and characteristics that come with pushing and pulling film. For instance, if you want to push film, if you want to push some color film a couple of stops, you're going to introduce more saturation and potentially have some color shifts. If you want to push black and white film, you'll run into more contrast and more grain. Depending on the project you're working on, maybe this is what you want. If you're pulling film, you'll be reducing the colors and muting them, and also reducing the contrast. So you definitely need to keep that in mind when pushing or pulling film, is that it changes the characteristics of what a normal exposure is. One situation where pushing and pulling could save you is if you forget to change your light meter. For instance, say you just finished a roll of Portra 100. You load in a fresh roll of Portra 400 and you begin shooting, but you realize you forgot to change your light meter to 400. You've been exposing everything for 100 ISO. That's not an issue. You just keep exposing for 100 ISO, and when it comes to developing, you can either push or pull your film. You can push it 2 stops to come back up to 400 ISO, or you can pull it 2 stops to come down to 100 ISO. If you just leave it normal for the developing time, you'll end up with overexposed images because you told the light meter that your film was less sensitive than it actually was, so it was adding more light into the images to expose them properly. I know that this can all be super confusing. I get confused myself, but if you do want to do some more reading on this, then I would suggest going to the link in the description to the darkroom. They've got a blog post on pushing and pulling film, which uses some extra tables and goes a little bit more in depth than I did, and it's a really, really good reference for how to push and pull your film appropriately. Always remember to tell your lab or even yourself that you have pushed or pulled a roll, because if you forget, it could lead in overexposed, underexposed, unusable images. If you have pushed or pulled your film, how did your results come out? Did you get what you wanted? Were you experimenting? Let me know below. I'd love to chat about it. And if anything in this video was confusing, or you have a question about your own personal endeavors about pushing or pulling and you don't know how to do it, let me know below and I'd be happy to help.